Welcome back to some more Create Integrated. Today, things are about to get real because over the last few episodes, I've been prepping myself for some adventure, but we've really been missing out on one thing: enchantments. So I've played around with a little bit of magic from Ars, but vanilla magic? Well, we need to dive a little bit deeper into. Now, thankfully, with what little enchants I do have, I've been able to get from our crushing wheels. This has been really nice because when this crushes things down, it gives us a chance of getting some experience nuggets. And these experience nuggets are things that I really want to start farming. Now, there's actually several ways that we could technically farm these. An easy way is actually making infested stone and then just pressing this down, and we can get ourselves some stone bricks, but also as a byproduct of that, some experience nuggets. But this right here, while is really, really cool, and the fact that we can make this is really nice, there are other ways that I think will be more effective. And I know you've probably seen this method a lot, right? Where you take, for example, I don't know, like an infested stone, and then you have a drill break that stone and it drops a silverfish into the world. Then the silverfish gets punched and then it gets dropped into some crushing wheels. And that in turn give you these nuggies. And I mean, that's all well and good. And it is a reliable sort of way to farm these experience nuggets, especially if you have, and specifically if you have the mod Enchantment Industries installed. Today, I want to use a different mod to do this. Yes, I actually didn't show you one of the recipes. If we take a look at the nuggets, there are a few different ways that we can farm these that aren't that method. And it's actually hidden here inside of the crushing wheel. One of those ways is prismarine, which can give us lapis and the chance of some experience nuggets. But if we dive a little bit deeper into this, there are several others, including prismarine bricks, which we can then crush and get a guaranteed 2 plus a bonus of 50% possibly, and also get copper nuggets and even get lapis from this. Now, the process of making this is not too bad. We have automated packing that we can use in order to make the bricks. That'll make this quite quick. And then we also have the process of converting flint directly into the prismarine shards, which is a process that I really want to get into. And that is the process of channeling, conduit channeling specifically. One of the few fan options that I have yet to use. But this means that we're going to need to get our hands on a conduit. And thankfully, I've already got one of the parts technically done. And that's because, like episode 1 or 2, when we went out to the ocean, we actually looted a chest from a buried treasure. And this right here is something that we can now recreate once we do have ourselves a conduit, but we've got to get ourselves a basic vanilla conduit first. The funny part about conduits is I don't think that the hardest part of getting the conduit is the heart of the sea. In my opinion, it's always been getting those nautilus shells, as there's a couple of ways you can get them. For example, you can get them from fishing. You can also get them from potentially killing a drowned that's holding one. And you can also sometimes get them from wandering traders if you're really lucky. But thankfully in here, we can get them by getting these suspicious rocks. So how do we actually get suspicious rocks? And it's also a pretty low chance. Well, we need to crush limestone. And this is going to give us a couple of things: calcium rich powder, but also that tiny chance of getting those suspicious rocks. This is where things are going to be made a little bit easier, but we've got to figure out, how do we find limestone? Well, limestone can be found underground, and I've actually tapped into some just from casually drilling. You can see there's limestone in my container here, but this is not a lot of limestone. And there's honestly not going to be a lot of limestone to be found underground, even though it does exist there. But there is a secret method that JEI doesn't necessarily show you that allows you to, well, get your hands on some limestone. And this is one of many hidden little, well, cobblestone generators that you can make if you have Create installed. Now, to make this cobblestone, we are going to need honey, and I do have a couple of bottles of honey, but something that we will probably end up doing later on and can do is pump directly out of a hive. But I do have these bottles because there were hives that I wanted to get rid of that were nearby. And so I went ahead and did that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drain these bottles onto this drain here, and I'm going to hook up another pump. So this setup right here is just going to allow me to get honey out of the bottle so that way I can bucket it up. That's really all we're going to need for this, is a bucket of honey and a bucket of lava. So there we go. There is some honey that is now filling in here, and we just need enough for a singular bucket. So 4 of those is good. And then we can grab ourselves a bucket here, slap that on there, and voila, we now have a bucket of honey. But we've got to put this to really good use now, and we don't want to lose this. So now out back here is kind of where I want to set this up. I want to utilize this wall back here temporarily to put a limestone farm. So how are we going to do a limestone farm? Well, let's first think about where we actually want the materials to go. So I want it to go in this barrel, and then on top of that, I want a chute. Now this chute, I really want to be able to use the chute to collect things that are drill farms. So this drill is going to try and break this block here, but this block that's right here needs to be limestone. And so this farm is going to be set up very much like a standard vanilla farm, like a standard vanilla cobblestone farm. So to make this happen, we should be able to expand out to the side. This will be where our actual honey will be right here. And then that will then flow onto this block, which we want to make sure to completely encapsulate. And then directly on top, we want lava to exist. So we want lava to actually be here. So the honey will go here. Perfect. And then lava directly on that. And that should turn that, like you see there. Ah! That should turn that into the block we're looking for. So perfect. We now have limestone, and I can start to get rid of some of these random blocks that we don't need. But now all I've got to do is get some rotational power into this. So we can hook up a gearbox here. Let's see if I can flip this from the other side. That would make life a little bit easier. So we'll flip that. So it's rotating upwards. And then same here. We'll go into this gearbox, connect it up, and now we are drilling. And the cool part about having a chute under this is that it's not actually breaking the block. So we don't ever have to worry about this transformation happening. It's always going to say a solid block here so long as the chute is underneath the drill. Kind of a new feature of Create. And there we go. It's just going to be generating all of this block for us. And not only is this a really good building material, this is actually a really, really nice way of getting, well, the resources we need to make the conduit. Another pro tip, by the way, because of the chute being underneath here, we don't really have to worry about overflow because this will not actually generate physical item entities in the world either when it fully finishes. I'm gonna grab some of these out. Let's go see if this is going to be enough. I'm hoping this is enough to at least get us the conduits we need. May not be. I mean, that 5% chance and then also another chance on top of that being all compounded together. I don't know. Look at that. There's the suspicious rock. So this needs to be washed and then it has a 5% chance. But you know what? Looking at this, this would be a really good bone meal farm. And I wonder, what's the calcium rich powder do? Okay, so it allows us to make calcite. Oh, that's a nice recipe. But for right now, I am after this. Let's wash all 16. I mean, the chance of us getting all of them is pretty low here. 5% out of 16, not very high. And we did get a couple, maybe just one. I think we just got one from that set, so I'm gonna have to let it generate for a little bit longer. After several limestone processing sessions, I now have 8 of the shells, and these are the remainders, some of the other products that we got from that. But I can definitely see this process like being automated, and this stuff just generating over time, the bone being an incredibly powerful thing being generated. But anyways, not all the shells, that is the main thing I am after, and so I can now make a conduit. Okay. So one of the things I want to see right off the bat is, can I just convert like one of these directly by placing a conduit in front of it? Okay, so that doesn't work. You can't just have a conduit placed like right in front of the fan. No. We are going to have to work our way towards upgrading this into a conduit cage. But before we can make this cage, we do have to get our hands on some prismarine here. So with all good things come a little bit of extra work. We are going to have to go out in search for this stuff. And I think Ars is going to help us do this. I'm thinking something that could help is possibly an Ars bow and quite possibly a wand. Now, for example, something like this bow can apply effects whenever we shoot something. But the way that we apply this is we need to have the spell built inside of our spell book. And for example, I have this one set that is harm, doing amplify, it then delays, which creates a new action essentially and allows it to reapply a new harm with a new amplify, does the same thing, does a harm, and then we have another amplify. So the way we can inscribe this is by placing the bow on here and then shift right clicking while that spell is in our inventory. And that is now set to this bow, and we can now shoot an arrow that is doing that effect on the arrow without even having arrows in my inventory. And so I can hit this dummy here and we can start to see the effects that are being applied. And so that hits for quite a bit of damage and repetitive damage over and over again, just from the harm spell. And keep in mind, we're also getting benefits from that spell power. All right, well, that just happened. Rip the bee, you know? Well, that's a pretty cool spell. I think I also want to apply this to the Enchanter's Wand. So they do work similarly. This is going to be more like an arrow where I can draw it back and apply, but this one's a little bit different because this one is a very quick shot and it doesn't consume that much mana. As you can see, we're regenning it quite quickly, but this projectile is much faster than this projectile. However, this one is like an arrow, but we can amplify the bow one even further with special arrows. And we've technically looted some of those arrows. So this is a splitting arrow, and then we also have the pierce arrow, but there's another arrow too that gives us amplify. This splits it into 3 separate arrows. So yeah, all of which should deal those spells across the 3 separate arrows. The bow is going to come into play a little bit later on whenever we're exploring a bit more, specifically in the nether. This bow can get kind of wild, especially whenever we add like the TNT or explosion glyph onto it. Yeah, it becomes quite ridiculous. For now, I think most of my damage is going to be done with the Enchanter's Wand. But back to the spell book. Another really useful spell is Self and Dispel. And I want this to stay on my book so I can swap between using this and also the remove effects. This is going to clear effects much like us drinking a bucket of milk. And then I can't forget this one. We have to do one of my favorite spells, and that is the dash spell. And I've been dashing with the Just Dire Things, but this one's going to be a little bit different. So we are going to allow ourselves to dash around and also float. So to do this, we have Self, then we have Leap, and then we have Slow Fall. But we can modify these a little bit differently. So for example, Leap, we probably want to put a couple of Amplify on here, and then we want to follow up with that Slow Fall, probably with a reduced time on it. And this is going to be our new Dash. And we can almost fly with this. Which is pretty darn cool. So we can leap around and we get this slow fall effect, and we can even dash ourselves straight into the ground. And so long as we have slow fall, we don't actually take fall damage. And so this is a nice, like, I don't know, a little bit chiller of a way of getting around. At least I think so. And we can actually bind this to a keybind, and we shouldn't have to worry about this running out of durability. So now I can have that remove effects like available, and I can just click it and also dash after setting a keybind without actually going into the selection wheel and selecting like the dash glyph, for example. Now, one more thing before I go out, we do have the snorkel, which we can put on our head, which is going to be pretty helpful, giving us a little bit of extra water breathing. And we do have this charm that goes in our necklace slot, but our necklace slot is kind of our regeneration for a mana, but this is going to allow us to regen our health while we're underwater and actually standing on a solid surface, which I think will be really helpful, specifically since I haven't brewed any water breathing potions, even though I do have a few of them from looting. So now it's time for us to go, well, grab ourselves some prismarine. Remember, that was the entire goal here. And of course, the best place to find prismarine is going to be the Guardian Temple. All right, so let's go ahead, chop our plane down, and we are underwater, ready to go after these guys. By the way, the goggles is what's giving me this underwater effect, where it's pretty clear, but things could be a little bit more clear if I, for example, used my light spell, switch that to self, and then also extend time. All right, that's going to give me night vision, which allows us to clear this up quite a lot. But as soon as I use the remove effects, it is going to clear that. So we can give us that. I just removed that effect. And there we go. And then we should be able to attack these guys. Yep. And that took that guy out quite quickly. All right. And so getting in here, same as vanilla. And because we don't have that effect on us, I can just pop in here and steal all of this stuff. Oh boy. There we go. There's a boss. I don't really want to take the bosses out just yet, because there is some interesting things that we can do, but we have a little bit of prismarine. I thought that would be way more prismarine. Let's grab a little bit of this. Okay, so we've been hit again. I'm gonna pop in, clear the effect, give myself night vision again. I'm just gonna grab some more. Grab some more of this. And then just get out of here. These guys are so annoying. Now, what a journey that was, and I love just being able to dash all around. It's so nice. But that, I think, will be plenty for right now. We do have Guardian's Delights. That's why I didn't want to kill the boss, because I do want to go back there eventually and actually use one of the knives to take down the Guardians. That way we can actually get some really cool food from that. But all right, back to the task at hand, getting ourselves the conduit cage so we can get this XP farm set up. I need to make prismarine alloy, which is going to require diamond grit and some diamond here. Now to make the cage itself, it looks like just 12 diamonds is all we need. And there we go. There's the 12 diamond grit and a little bit of wood. Once we get this placed down in here, we just need to toss this in. And that should give us the alloy that we need. Perfect. So now we have that prismarine alloy all kind of combined together. And a few little tweaks here, we get ourselves a conduit cage. So now that I have the conduit cage, I've got to figure more things out. This has to be constantly pumped with water in order for it to work. But I also want to figure out, where do I want to set up this farm? And I'm thinking right about here. After a little bit of figuring out how I want to set this up, I've done a few things and I've kind of got it laid out. I don't think this is going to require a whole lot of space. I mean, it's essentially going to be a fan blowing on a conduit cage, and the conduit cage needs water to be pumped into it. And then we just need a little bit of logistics and some package handling, because I do want to use packages for this. This is going to be kind of fun. But before we start worrying about packages, I mean, I had to get these chain conveyors raised up so that way it looked a little bit better when packages are flowing on them. Because with them being directly connected to the girders, I didn't really like the idea of that. So I've just raised them all up one, and that was really easy to just disconnect. Not really worried about these as of right now, but I did get the main ones up. And I also added a stress quick connect over here, which is just our chain conveyors linking them up, so that way we can get stress connected directly over here. And so let's go ahead and try this out. I want to place in some cogs for right now, so I can get the pump running, and then place in the water. So we have infinite water, and that should cause this to power on, which it is doing. But wow, it definitely doesn't seem like it's enough water for whatever reason. Like, I see the water going in and out, but it does say conduit power, and it's like increasing up to a certain point. I mean, I assume it's working just fine. So after a little bit of finagling, I ended up getting this working, and I'm using the encased chain cogwheel here, which is one of my favorites from Create Connected. But yes, it works the same way as an encased chain drive. However, a cog can be attached to the side. So it works really well in this scenario where I needed to get the speed rotated. But yes, this is now blowing, and it looks like it is blowing the water here, which is kind of exactly what I want. And what I want to do is just simply drop ingredients directly into this, drop it down, and then have it processed, and then do the processing thereafter. Now for the processing here, we go from the conduit cage. So we have the cage here that is going to hopefully convert our flint. The flint's going to drop from the chute. Then we need to collect that into the basin. So we can just use a funnel, specifically a brass funnel that has a filter on it. We're gonna have to set that filter, making sure that pulls that in. Then this is going to have a recipe in here that is set to specifically make prismarine bricks. Once the prismarine bricks are made, it should send it into the crushing wheels, and the crushing wheels are going to carry that power over here. Now I want this belt to wrap around, so we can use the chain transmission chains right here to connect that to get that carrying that same rotation around. And then I think what I'm going to do here is use like some limited barrels to handle all three different supplies that we're going to be producing. And we can use something like a mechanical arm to pull the items off the belt and to send it into the back of these using, I don't know, like some funnels that are filtered. I think that would be a pretty cool looking setup. We just have to make sure all of these are filtered with the items. Now, I do want these copper nuggets to be automatically converted inside of a limited barrel. So I'm going to use a double limited barrel here. And I'm going to place in this upgrade slot a compression upgrade. So what this will do, it'll automatically take those nuggets and kind of work like if you've ever played with storage drawers or functional storage, this this is going to kind of work like an automatic compacting drawer. Now for the mechanical arm, I'm going to set all 3 of these locations as positions where it can take items off the belt. And all 3 of these are going to be positions where this is going to send to. And I'm going to place it upside down because I think that looks so much better. Remove our supports, and then we just got to get power up to this. So I just about have all of the filters in place, and I think we're almost ready to start figuring out how to get the flint from our main factory over to here. So now here's where things can get a little bit confusing because we're going to jump into the create packaging system. But I am going to show you a straightforward way. If you're just wanting to get one resource from one location in an inventory to another one without filtering or anything like that, it is as easy as setting up a destination, which is going to be a frog port. And we're going to be looking onto this chain. For example, right here is going to be a good place. We're going to use a packager that is connected to the frog port. So the packager is connected here, connected to the barrel. And then we have the frog port that is going to be connected to a chain and then attached here. But what's important is we need to make sure that this is set to send and receive, specifically receive, and we need to label it what we want the other package to send to it. So this is giving an address, much like your home address. So in this, I'm going to say Flint, and we'll say Flint and then underscore so we can define whatever we want. Specifically here, it's going to be XP. So Flint XP, and then I'm just going to copy this, or you can use a clipboard. But so long as it's named Flint XP, we can basically say, hey, packagers, I need you to send specifically to Flint XP. And the way that we are going to do that is by going over to our Flint barrel, for example, here. And what we can do is we can set this up to automatically package things by giving this a redstone signal. It's going to pull all the contents out of here. And we need to send this to a frog port. So let's go ahead and make a frog port to send the package. The frog port here, though, needs to be connected to a chain. And I think I'm going to have to move this chain. But the idea is that when this is given a redstone signal, we want it to give it an address on that package. And this is going to be the same thing we just said. And this sign being on here tells this packager to give these packages a very specific address. And that address is Flint XP that I just labeled here. So now let's figure this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a line down here, and we can use shafts. Don't really mind here. And I just want to get this set up in a different location. That way our packages can be connected. And so we'll say this right here is where packages will reach. We'll chain this together. So connect it up to the main chain line, run that over here. And that is all hooked up. Okay, so now this is carrying all the packages. So let's set this new frog connected up to here. And so that is going to take those packages and then send them around. I'm just going to connect it as close as I can right here. This one is going to be a send only, and we actually don't have to worry about labeling it or anything like that. That way we know it's specifically going to go out here. By the way, just in case you didn't know, also with frog ports, you can slap goggles onto them, which I always find to be quite hilarious. But now we have all of that flint built up. We just need to give this a redstone signal. That's going to pick that up, and it already knows the location based on the chains of where to send. And it is looking for that other frog port, which just so happens to be right here. And all of that flint gets put into the barrel and is now being dropped down in here to then be processed, which we should see this operation kick off and start happening. And there's all of our ingredients now being processed up and being handled like that. Look at this. The mechanical arm is doing all the work here. That is fantastic. I almost wonder if it'd be faster if we only defined one input location and maybe had a buffer chest. At some point, this is going to slow down. It just has a lot of reserve. So yeah, it is going to take some time. By the way, buffer chests kind of work like this. Let me kind of explain. What we want to do is we want to take the contents here that's building up, allow it to go somewhere and have somewhere to be able to be processed. But then what we do is we'll output larger stacks. And we can specify this to up to, and so we can say like up to 8 at a time. So it's going to wait until 8 items sort of build up in here before trying to send them out. And so I've set this to exactly 16 for right now. That seems to be a pretty fair number. Now I'm just going to worry about upgrading the barrel and getting this making sure we can store a lot of these items. Now let's also not forget that I am producing a ton of flint all over the place. So this is producing flint, this is producing flint that's being voided, and this is even producing flint that's being voided. So there's a lot of opportunities here for me to collect even more flint. For example, this barrel right here, I could just place in another packager with another frog port that is set up. And then we just need to make sure to label this the exact same thing that we labeled the other one. And this will also send as soon as I send this redstone signal, and I can stop it from voiding. So instead of scrapping all of this flint, I mean, we can take an item drain. And this is kind of a neat little thing we can do. We can send items from here via item drain. So I can have that roll on through and be collected into this barrel. Just like so, and then yet again we have another flint barrel that I can just add to this list. Now already I get to kind of show off one of the side effects of having multiple inputs like this that are constantly being sent with a solid redstone signal. And you end up with packages starting to build up because, well, there is just a limit to how many packages a frog port can well receive at once. So a way that we can actually help with this is to use pulse timers. So instead of a solid redstone signal that we're giving to this, we can instead use a pulse timer and have this happen maybe only every so often. So every 20 to 30 seconds. Let's just do 30 seconds, for example. So every 30 seconds, this will then receive a pulse. And the same thing needs to happen for these other ones too. With this in place, every 30 seconds, this is then going to try to send the ingredients that are in here. So it lets it build up, and that way it can hold more in the package. So there's going to be more flint in each package instead of a bunch of packages with very little flint in it. And remember, by the way, each of these packages can hold 9 stacks of items in them. So now with this, I have a pretty decent passive auto generation. I mean, I could make this even better by just passively generating a ton of flint. But as of right now, this is just utilizing all of our extra wasted flint that we're not using anywhere else. And so this is a perfect way to put it to use. And now I'm generating a little bit of extra XP that I can then use for many other projects, specifically ones that I want to work on next episode, which is going to involve duplicating enchanted books and, well, getting into a new enchantment mod. Now, I'm going to have to call this setup a huge success. I mean, we are generating not only the XP that I really need, but I also am producing lapis, which allows me to automate Ars crystals. So yeah, I can just take some of this and directly take it all the way over here, toss it into my automation system, and we can just produce crystals. Like, it's that easy. Oh, and then we have like a unlimited source of that now. Maybe another reason we could use a frog port just to have lapis passively sent over here. I still don't think lapis has a lot more uses outside of this, and we can even now use this lapis to technically go back. And I believe we can also use this to convert it back into several other different things. Yes, we can use the conduit to literally turn it back into prismarine shards. And we also get a bonus of getting prismarine crystals from this too. We just need to make ourselves, well, another one of these conduit cages, which I see will probably be something that we'll end up doing in the future. Now, I did notice I did have an effect up in the top right-hand corner, but if you set this to friendly mobs, that does go away and you won't see the conduit effect like applied to you anymore. But this is pretty cool. Like this just existing. I thought this was a pretty cool mechanic to add to the pack. And it definitely beats having a ton of just random silverfish spawning all over your base, creating lag. So I think this was a win all around. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And also, while you're checking out that comments, be sure to check if you're subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, be sure to click that subscribe button. And also give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. And hopefully you enjoyed it. And guys, without further ado, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks, well, that thanks is going to go out to Tellum. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord. I'm becoming a Discord premium member and just supporting my content in one of the best ways possible. Thank you so very much. And thanks to everyone here. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.